In every court Machiavelli ever studied, there was one advisor who never said no, and by the time the prince finally needed him to be dangerous, there was nothing dangerous left in the man to use. That advisor is not just history sitting in a book somewhere. He might be your father. He might be you. Think about your father for a second. All the years he said yes to people who never once asked if he had anything left to give. All the favors he absorbed quietly so nobody else at the table had to. Nobody thanked him properly for most of it. Nobody remembers it as kindness anymore. It just became what he does. The way a switch is expected to turn the light on without anyone ever thanking the switch for doing its job. You have been that switch too. Maybe you still are. And I'm not saying that to insult you. I'm saying it because somewhere along the way, you taught the people around you that you don't need to be asked twice. You don't need to be thanked properly. You don't even need to be asked at all. You'll just handle it because that's who you are. That's not who you are. That's who they decided you'd be, using evidence you handed them for free. One small yes at a time. For years. He spent his life in exactly those rooms, watching that precise miscalculation get people destroyed, not metaphorically, actually destroyed. Careers ended, alliances burned, lives lost over misreading who could be pushed and who couldn't. He wasn't interested in being liked. He was interested in what actually happens to people, and what he found out about kindness is something almost nobody has the stomach to tell you directly. So I'm going to tell you directly. Kindness without protection isn't a virtue. It's an open door. And for the next several minutes, you're going to watch that door get walked through again and again by people you probably still call friends, still call family, still call love. The moment it starts, it never starts with something big. Nobody hands you a contract that says, "Give me your time forever." It starts small, so small you don't even clock it as a moment. You just experience it as being helpful, being easy to get along with, being the one nobody has to worry about. Can you stay 20 minutes late just this once? Can you cover for me and I'll get you back next time? Can I vent to you at midnight because you're the only one who gets it? Each one on its own sounds like nothing, and that's exactly the design. Because nobody tests a boundary with a request big enough to get rejected. They test it with something small enough that saying no would feel petty. Something small enough that you'd feel a little ridiculous making it a whole conversation. You say yes. Not because you're weak, because saying no to something that small felt like it would make you the difficult one, and you've spent your whole life avoiding that label. So you absorb it, and somewhere in the other person's mind, a note gets filed without a single word being spoken. This one doesn't push back. That note is the whole game. Everything after it is just escalation, dressed up as normal life. A story. You already know. There was a woman on a team I watched carry this exact pattern for years. The kind of employee who never said no to anything. Stayed late without complaint, covered every gap nobody else wanted to cover. And when the promotion came around, it went to someone else. Someone who had said no plenty of times. Someone who left at 6 every single day without apology. When she asked why, her manager didn't even hesitate. He said, "Honestly, we already know we can count on you no matter what happens. We weren't sure about him, so we needed to give him a reason to stay invested." Sit with that for a second because it's one of the cruelest sentences a good person can hear. Her reliability wasn't rewarded. It was assumed, and assumed things don't get paid for, they get expected for free. Meanwhile, his unpredictability got treated like a resource that needed to be protected and cultivated, fed, kept happy, in case he decided to walk. This isn't a story about one unfair manager. This is what happens almost everywhere, quietly, to almost everyone who has ever confused being taken for granted with being needed. The second story. The one closer to home. Here's one that doesn't happen at work, because this isn't only a career problem, it follows you home. Picture 2 adult siblings. One of them calls only when something's wrong, needs money sometimes, needs a place to stay sometimes, needs someone to listen at 11 at night when the crisis of the week hits. The other one, the one this video is actually about, always answers, always shows up, always says of course, don't worry about it, always absorbs the cost quietly so nobody else in the family has to. For years, that looks like closeness. It gets called being the strong one, being the reliable one, being the one who holds everything together. Nobody notices that one sibling is spending down a reserve that never gets refilled, while the other one keeps making withdrawals without ever once asking if there's anything left in the account. Then one year, the strong one finally says, "I can't do this right now. I have my own things falling apart." And the family doesn't rally around her exhaustion. They ask what happened to her, like something broke, like she used to be better than this. Nobody asks what happened to the years of withdrawals that came before that one moment of running dry. That's not a coincidence, and it's not personal to that family. It's what happens to anyone who gets cast as the one who doesn't need anything, in any system, at any table. How to spot who's actually doing this to you. Not everyone who asks you for help is doing this on purpose, and I want to be precise about that instead of turning this into paranoia. Most people asking for a favor are just people asking for a favor. But there is a specific type worth knowing how to recognize, because dark psychology isn't really about spotting obvious villains. It's about spotting patterns that hide in plain sight. Watch for the person who only reaches out when they need something, and somehow never has the bandwidth to reciprocate when you need something back. Watch for the person who responds to your boundary with guilt instead of respect, who reaches for after everything I've done for you, as if kindness were a loan with interest attached. Watch for the person who gets strangely uncomfortable, almost irritated, the first time you say no to them, not because the request was denied, but because the rules of the relationship just changed without their permission. None of these people will ever announce themselves. Manipulation, the real kind, the kind that actually works on good people, never looks like a villain twirling a mustache. It looks like someone who's a little too comfortable with how much you give, and a little too uncomfortable with how much you don't. There's one more sign, quieter than the rest, and it's the one most people miss completely. Watch what happens the very first time you mention needing something for yourself, not asking for a favor, just mentioning a need out loud. Someone who genuinely respects you leans in. Someone who's been quietly benefiting from your bottomless availability changes the subject, gets suddenly busy, gets vaguely annoyed that the conversation shifted away from their needs and onto yours, even for 30 seconds. That reaction tells you everything the last 5 years of niceness couldn't. Where this was actually taught to you, nobody arrives at adulthood already like this. Somewhere earlier, this got installed, quietly, by people who probably meant well, and that matters, because you can't fix a pattern you think is just your personality when it was actually a lesson you were taught before you had any say in the matter. Maybe it was the house where the peaceful one got praised and the one who spoke up got labeled difficult. Maybe it was the classroom where being agreeable got you liked and being firm got you sent to the office. Maybe nobody ever said the words "be quiet" and let people take what they want out loud. But you learned it anyway, the way children learn everything that actually matters, by watching what got rewarded and what got punished. That conditioning doesn't disappear once you grow up. It just changes costume. It stops looking like a scared kid trying to keep the peace at home, and it starts looking like an adult who genuinely believes being agreeable is the same thing as being good. It isn't. It never was. It was survival, dressed up as virtue, and you've been calling it your personality for so long you forgot it was ever a choice at all, when they use your own goodness against you. Here's where it turns from unfair into something darker. One day, after years of always saying yes, you finally say no. And instead of getting even a moment of respect for it, you get hit with the sentence that guts people like you every single time. But you always help everyone. Why are you being like this now? Notice what just happened there. Your history of generosity didn't earn you credit. It got rewritten as a contract you never agreed to sign, and the second you stopped honoring a contract you never signed, you became the villain. Not them, for expecting endless free labor from you for years without once checking if you were okay. You, for finally stopping. Machiavelli called this exact trap out centuries before therapy language existed for it. Loyalty bought through constant favors was never real loyalty in his eyes. It was dependency wearing loyalty's face, and dependency always turns vicious the moment the favors stop, because it was never about you to begin with. It was about what you provided. Say this sentence out loud. Right now. Actually say it. Don't just read it in your head. Say, my kindness is not the same thing as my availability. Feel how strange that sentence feels coming out of your mouth, if you've never had to say it before. That strangeness is the whole problem. You've never had to say it because you were never taught that those two things could be separated, that you could be a deeply good person and still be a closed door sometimes, and that the second thing doesn't cancel out the first. Let's play this out honestly. I want you to picture the exact same request landing on you twice, in 2 different years of your life. In the first year, you say yes instantly, no hesitation, no question asked, because that's simply what you do, and everyone at the table nods like nothing happened, because as far as they're concerned, nothing did. Further down the road, the same request lands again, and this time you pause before answering. You actually ask what it will cost you, and sometimes you still say yes. But now people notice the pause, and some of them even resent it. Here's the part that should make you a little angry. The pausing version of you gets called difficult sometimes, but it also earns a kind of caution the instant version never did. Because caution is just respect wearing a more suspicious face. Machiavelli wrote about this with a bluntness that still stings hundreds of years later. People judge you by what you appear to be, almost never by what you actually are underneath it. An endless availability doesn't appear strong, it appears bottomless, and bottomless things don't get respected. They get consumed, slowly, politely, one request at a time. The years you don't notice passing. Nobody breaks in one dramatic moment. That's not how this actually works, no matter how many movies want you to believe it is. What breaks people is quieter than that. It's the version of you at 2 in the morning, staring at a ceiling, wondering why you feel exhausted by people you genuinely love, and then feeling guilty for being exhausted, which somehow makes you even more tired than the exhaustion itself. It's realizing you can't remember the last time you said yes to something because you wanted to, instead of because saying no felt unbearable, felt selfish, felt like it would cost you something you weren't ready to lose. That's the slow bleed. Not one betrayal. Thousands of small unpaid debts, stacking silently for years, until the version of you that used to feel joy in helping people simply isn't available anymore, and you don't even know exactly when she left the room, what he actually meant. Because it isn't what you think. Hear this before you get the wrong idea. Because the lesson here was never become cold. He never argued against goodness. He argued against goodness with no defense built around it, handed out to anyone regardless of whether they'd earned it or were simply harvesting it. And strip away the dramatic reputation, what's actually left is embarrassingly simple. Virtue that cannot protect itself from being taken is not virtue at all. It is just a resource sitting out in the open, waiting for whoever gets there first. A person capable of both gentleness and force, choosing whichever one the moment actually demands instead of defaulting to whichever one avoids conflict. That was the entire idea, and it still holds up perfectly today. In offices, in families, in every relationship where someone has quietly decided you're the one who never says no. The cost, nobody ever puts on a receipt. Think about every hour you've spent absorbing someone else's problem that wasn't actually yours to solve. Every late night helping move furniture for a friend who never once offered to help you move. Every emotional crisis you sat through at midnight for someone who wouldn't sit through 5 minutes of yours. None of that gets billed anywhere. There's no invoice, no line item, which is exactly why it's so easy to lose track of how much you've actually spent. But it was spent. That was real time, real energy, real attention that could have gone toward your own goals, your own rest, your own life. And instead, it went toward keeping someone else comfortable while you quietly ran a deficit nobody else could see. Machiavelli understood something about resources that applies here with brutal precision. A ruler who spends without limit eventually has nothing left to rule with, and the people who benefited from that spending don't step in to refill it. They simply move on to whoever has something left to give. You are allowed to ask where all of it went. You are allowed to be furious that nobody ever handed you a receipt. Taking it back, for real, this time. So here's what actually shifts. Starting the next time someone asks you for something, you stop rewarding access with more access. Because somebody being persistent isn't the same as somebody earning your time, and treating those two things as equal is exactly how you ended up here. You start noticing the small, unfair ask the moment it happens, not 3 months later when it's already a pattern, because that tiny moment where something feels slightly off, but not worth mentioning, that's the entire war, fought and lost in silence, every single time. You let no exist on its own, without a defense attached to it, without 3 sentences justifying your right to have a limit in the first place, because the version of you who explains every boundary is still underneath it, asking for permission to have one. This is not about becoming someone who keeps score, who calculates every act of warmth like a business transaction, because that would just be a different kind of cold, and cold was never the goal. It is about noticing who shows up for you in return, and who only shows up when they need something, and finally letting that information change how much access each of them gets, instead of pretending you never noticed. It is about still saying yes sometimes, but knowing whether that yes is coming from love or from fear of what happens if you refuse, because those are not the same answer, even when they sound identical coming out of your mouth. And it is about no longer mistaking someone's comfort around your availability for actual respect toward you, because those have never been the same thing, not once, not with anyone, no matter how long you told yourself otherwise. One last thing before you go. Remember her. The one who said yes for the 11th time, and nobody looked up. Picture her one more time, but picture what happens next, the version where she finally notices the 12th ask coming before it even finishes leaving someone's mouth, the version where she pauses, actually pauses, for the first time in years, before the automatic yes comes flying out. That pause is the entire transformation, not a speech, not a dramatic confrontation, just one single pause where there used to be none. She's not a cautionary tale. She's a version of you that's still allowed to change, starting today, starting with the next small ask that shows up in your life, disguised as nothing at all. Machiavelli watched kingdoms fall because someone in power gave everything away and mistook silence for gratitude. He watched good rulers get replaced by ruthless ones, not because goodness was wrong, but because it was undefended, wide open, free for the taking. You get to watch your own life instead, before it costs you what it cost them, before the switch finally goes dark and everyone acts surprised that the person who held everything together for years had a breaking point after all. If any part of this described your life a little too accurately, subscribe, because we're going a lot deeper into this than most channels are willing to go. Tell me the smallest request that turned into the heaviest weight you've ever carried. I want to read it. Your kindness was never the weakness. The silence around it was. Close that door now, while it's still yours to close, and next time someone walks toward it expecting it to swing open the way it always has, let them find out it doesn't anymore.